Welcome, everybody, to episode 51 of our podcast, where we discuss the life of Paul and the people that he's met along the way and the journey. And Gerald, it's very encouraging to see that the whole life of Paul, it's about relationship.
That's what it's all about. Over 101 people mentioned in the New Testament, all his writings. And today, can I just say this? I think we're speaking about the most unsung hero of them all.
So the reason is
yeah.
obviously because the only reason why we know about Paul is because we've read it in the Bible.
That's right.
And we're speaking about Carpus.
That's right.
This is the guy that actually looked after the books, helped
Yeah.
Paul in developing them, it seems like it, and the books that he wrote in the New Testament.
Just before we get there, you know what's interesting about this individual? He's one of the mature guys. So this is not even a guy just that Paul would have influenced. This guy would have influenced Paul.
Yeah.
And he was someone that actually recognized Paul to be a gift to the church. And when Paul writes to Timothy, this is just before he goes and to become martyred. And this guy's, he realizes the things that Paul has said, the things that Paul has written, needs to be kept for a church year after, even though Paul's about to go through a difficult time. We obviously could speak about the practical aspects, but this man was special. Carpus was someone that was alive. Maybe I can just read the scripture to us. It's interesting. Paul says this to Timothy. He says, when I was in Troas, so he speaks about a time that he was there. He says, I left my coat there with Carpus. So when you come, bring it to me. Also bring my books. And that's where the keys that you're speaking about. He says, the books written on the parchment are the ones I need. And so what we see here firstly is that this guy must have had Paul stay at his house. Fantastic. But he also makes his house available to look after the treasures of the books, the stories of Paul's writings, which we enjoy today. And again, this is just for me such an example of an unsung hero. How many times do we as pastors get the credit? Oh, he was the pastor of that church, or he was the pastor of that church. And the reality is that the guy who's the hero is usually never the binding factor of the whole story of that church or of a community of believers and stuff. And this guy was just incredible.
So when we look at his life now, and Paul's, like you said, obviously stayed with him, and they should have talked about a lot of things, and you know, the importance of keeping those books and keeping it sacred, and Paul is saying it, needing it. And we know that Paul was on his way to get martyred now. How important is for us, even if we know there's a trial time that's in front of us, to keep doing what we do?
Yeah, you see, so what happens is Paul had already settled things with it coming out of his mouth. So he'd said words like this, for me to live is Christ, to die is gain.
Yeah.
And so Paul had settled in his mind what his call was. He says, I'm called as a servant and an apostle of Jesus Christ to help God's chosen people. Yeah. That's what Paul said. So he understood, listen here, my life on this earth is to be a servant, to act like an apostle, and then to make sure that I'm helping God's people. How do I do that? Well, I do that by writing. Yeah. I do that by leaving them information for the years to come, which you and I still benefit on. And I think that inspires me so much about Paul, that he knows trials coming, but he's got a clarity on his purpose and call. And I think we could learn a lot from that, because there's no time to be sorry for yourself. You need to understand the purpose, the call upon your life, and you need to go after that.
You've been speaking a lot about it lately in some of your sermons as well, where we get our minds get clogged up when we go through difficult times. And Paul is a great example of this, knowing what's lying ahead, what he has to endure, but still saying, listen here, just bring me the books. I need it now. I need to finish this job, and I need to finish strong.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that the Bible even says, you know, serve God with your whole heart, and then it says with a willing mind. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I mean, for the last 2 years, have been really leaning into thoughts about the power of our minds. And I think Paul had that kind of mind. He had a clarity on what he wanted to achieve. He also had a clarity on what he needed to achieve. And then something else that we don't recognize on here, he's writing to Timothy. Now, I could say something about Timothy, and maybe we can, but Paul's getting older here. Yeah. And so I think, again, there's a responsibility as you understand, listen, the years are ticking on, that you act with the kind of diligence that's going to leave the next generation stronger.
Yeah.
And I'm just inspired. Just something else about Paul here. When he sends Timothy a letter, just think about that. You and I send you a letter. Hey, Reno, do me a favor. On the way to Joburg, just stop there, pick up my coat for me, and bring the books with, by the way. Paul must have had a serious influence on Timothy there.
Yeah.
There must have been a real relationship there that Timothy turned around and said, listen, Paul needs a coat. Yeah, I'll buy him a new coat.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Buy yourself a new coat. No, I need my coat. I want my coat. So a lot of that scripture tells us about a Paul that's getting older. You know, some of those older people,
Yeah.
they don't want a new coat.
Yeah.
They want
That specific.
They want
one.
their coat. You know, that coat has been worn and it's comfortable and all the rest of it. And then obviously, bring my books. But just think about this. Carpus must have known who Timothy was as well.
Yeah.
And so obviously, suddenly, because of his relationship with Paul, when Paul gets martyred, Timothy is now able to actually lean into Carpus as well,
Yes.
regarding that relationship. And I just think that in itself is powerful as well. When he gets there to Uncle Carpus and he says, hey, how you? He says, listen, yeah, Paul sent me here for his jacket. Oh, don't worry, I'll get it for you. Oh, by the way, he wants me to scratch through the books that you're looking after. He says, I must bring these books to him.
Yeah.
That's just it's an incredible story
And
of
we
this
don't know-
guy's diligence. Sir.
And we don't even know if Paul maybe did it intentionally of sending Timothy back. You know, maybe they could have later get the books, but really wanting to protect that relationship as well, setting Timothy up for future plans that he had.
That's brilliant, what you're thinking there. That's seriously, because just think about that. Paul realizes it's my end.
Yeah.
I need to make sure that my young disciple has a father figure, someone to look at. And now we don't have scripture that can tie that down, so
Yeah.
we need to be careful about it. But what we do know is that Timothy knows where this guy's house is.
Yeah.
He knows who this guy is. And so Paul must have spoken about him to Timothy. He must have spoken to Carpus about Timothy as well. There must have been this conversation about how they trusted each other.
Yeah.
And again, today we enjoy the books because 3 men got together.
Yeah.
It's powerful stuff, man.
Once again, just about the relationships. Wrapping this up, Gerald.
Yeah.
Last thoughts.
I just think everyone out there needs to understand that it's not a platform that spreads a message. It's cohesive relationships that spread a message.
Agree.
Someone could be quietly looking after the books. Someone else is sitting in prison writing those books. But a young man needs to go fetch those books. And today you and I are influenced by those books.
Yeah. And we're still speaking about
Be
it.
who you got to be in the kingdom. Man. Just be.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. So if you did enjoy this podcast, we really want to encourage you to maybe share it with other people as well. Remember, you are more than welcome to ask us any questions. You can email us. If you want to find out about our connections and the relationships we have as a Friend of God family, please go and have a visit. Go visit our website. You'll find out all the information there. But from our side, nothing but love.
Nothing but love, friends.